Well, hey there, and welcome to Wedding Planning Simplified. I'm Amy from Unmistakably You. I'm a wedding planner and educator here in London, Ontario. And if you are newly engaged, congratulations. We know that it has been a busy season of holiday engagements over Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and we're coming up on Valentine's Day on Monday. So if you're thinking you might get engaged on Valentine's Day, congratulations as well. If you join us every week here, welcome. Nice to see you. Thank you for giving me someone to talk to so it's not like I'm talking into the ether. And if you're newly joining us, we've had some new members come on board this week. Welcome and thanks for being here. We go live every Sunday at 1 o'clock to talk about topical issues in wedding planning, hopefully things that you are dealing with, and we try to give you some insight so that you can navigate your planning process with as little stress as possible and hopefully get to the end of it still in love with your fiance. We're here today to talk about setting realistic budget expectations. Now, budget is a four-letter word in wedding world. And if you've gotten into your planning or if you're midway through or nearing the end, you know that it is a behemoth of a thing to have to deal with. Unfortunately, as soon as you put that W word onto anything, the prices skyrocket. And you've probably experienced that if you've delved into the planning at all. So today we're here to talk a little bit about what's realistic. And it's so challenging to determine what's realistic when you've presumably never planned a wedding before and you have no idea what weddings can cost. And so that's why we here at Unmistakably You really firmly believe that we are here to support you throughout your whole wedding planning journey. So that's why we do these lives every Sunday. That's why we do things like give you additional support through the workshops that we run. And here's a little plug. We're actually doing a budget workshop this coming Wednesday and Thursday. So if you are catching this from London, Ontario, and you'd like to join us, it, I promise, will be the best $50 you spend in your wedding planning. Wedding budgets can get out of hand so quickly, and I have no legitimate statistics. I can just tell you anecdotally, over 13 years of planning weddings, I have had so many couples come in near the end of their planning and their budget is blown and they're stressed and they're arguing and they just are not enjoying the wedding planning and not looking forward to the wedding anymore. And all of that, or at least most of it, can be avoided by starting out on the right foot with a realistic budget for you. And that's why we're offering our budget workshop on Wednesday live in London, and Thursday is virtual. We do still have some spaces left. So if you'd like to register for that, let me know. Send me an email, amy@unmistakably.you.com. We'd love to help you out. It's $50 for the live, $40 for the virtual, and I promise you'll leave with a realistic and completely comprehensive budget that will hopefully help you eliminate some of those fights down the road. So we are here today just to talk about the very tip of the iceberg. What is realistic for you? And again, having never planned a wedding before, you may have been dreaming of what you want since you were a tiny human. You may have attended friends' weddings and seen what they did and gotten some ideas there, but you probably don't have a sense of what that all cost. It's kind of a whole different ballgame once you jump into planning your own wedding, and once the rubber hits the road, you're going to have to determine what is realistic for you because you have very little context, presumably. Planning a wedding is a lot like buying a house, except that there are no comparables that you can look up easily. Like you can go on MLS and you can check out what the house around the corner sold for. You can see all of the prices of the houses in the area that you're looking for, whereas you can't do that with a wedding. It's not like somebody gets married and then they, put a statement of their financials up online for everybody to check out. So where, $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 seems like a lot of money, in some ways it is. Absolutely. That's a great deposit on a house, or that's, half a car or an entire car. So it's a lot of money. But in wedding world, a lot of our couples are really surprised by how far 20,000 or 30,000 or 50,000 really doesn't go. Now, of course, it all depends on a lot of things. Like, to go back to the house buying analogy, when you buy a house, you make your list of things that you want to have. You want to have 3 bedrooms and an ensuite bathroom and a finished basement and a big backyard. And then you start looking at houses and you find that, well, this one ticks most of the boxes, but maybe it doesn't have an ensuite. And then you have to decide, okay, can we live without the ensuite? Can we add an ensuite later in a future renovation? So there are things that you're going to have to compromise on. And you start to realize with wedding planning and with home buying that those compromises start to come pretty quickly, because unfortunately, unless that budget is unlimited, you do have to find things that you are willing to give up. Now, if you've started out by knowing how much you want to spend, it can be kind of a sense of relief in knowing, okay, well, we're only going to spend 30,000, and that's great, until you start to actually go venue shopping or go vendor shopping and recognize that, you buy a beautiful bouquet of flowers at the supermarket, it's about this big and it costs you about $50. And then you buy a beautiful bridal bouquet and it's about this big and it costs you $300. And you start to realize that as soon as you put that W word in front of anything, prices skyrocket. So it's really daunting to figure out what is realistic when you have no no frame of reference. So that's why I really suggest that you do your homework, you do your research, you start with those conversations. So 3 things that I would absolutely advise you to do when you are determining what's realistic for you. 1, start with conversations. Start with conversations with your partner about what you want, what your priorities are, what's important to you, what is reasonable for you to save, what is reasonable for you to allocate towards the wedding expenses. And that will depend on a million different things. It'll depend on how far in the future you're getting married. It'll depend on anything that you can cut out of your daily expenses to save a little bit more money. You'll also want to have some conversations, presumably with anybody else who's a financial stakeholder in the wedding. Maybe your parents are contributing. Maybe your grandparents are contributing. So it's an uncomfortable conversation, absolutely. If you're anything like me, you were taught that talking about money is pretty gauche, but you're going to have those conversations. Sit down with the parents if you know that there's going to be some kind of a contribution on their part, because you can't depend on them to give you $15,000 or $25,000 and then find out at the end that they've given you $1,500 or $2,500, and then starting your marriage in a real state of financial discomfort is not anything that I would recommend to anybody. So first things first in setting up a realistic budget is conversations with your partner, conversations with other financial stakeholders. Absolutely. Then in those conversations with your partner, you're going to set up your priorities and you're going to determine a baseline. And like I said earlier, there are no comparables. You can't figure out exactly what it cost your friends to have that beautiful ballroom wedding. But what I can tell you is that it is fairly easy to find baseline pricing for the biggest factors of your wedding budget. And those big factors are going to be food and beverage. In most cases, if you're having a fairly traditional wedding, you can expect to allocate about 50%, for easy math, of your budget towards food and beverage. And so from there, you can kind of extrapolate what the entire budget is reasonable to set if you are, let's say, wanting to have a traditional wedding in a ballroom at a hotel with a 3-course sit-down dinner and an open bar. I can tell you right now that depending on your geographical region and the kind of hotel you're looking at, it's safe to allocate between $200 and $250 per person towards that. So you can do the math from there to determine what's realistic for your overall budget and if your priorities match that. So if you've got 100 guests, you multiply 100 by 250, and then you take that and you multiply it by 2, because food and beverage is presumably about 50% of your overall spend. If you're thinking you want to have a private property wedding, we talked about this in our venue series in January. So if you need to go back and find those videos, they're all in our archives. But the thought or the misconception is often there that if you're getting married on private property, it's going to be a lot more affordable because you don't have those expensive venue fees to pay. And in some cases, that can be true. You could want to do a buffet dinner with, purchase of your own alcohol, and that'll save you some money there. And you can assume probably between $30 and $50 or $60 per head for that, depending on your caterer, of course. But then you also have to figure in the cost of all of the rentals that you're going to have to bring in to create that venue out of nowhere, and the staffing that's going to entail as well. So take that 30 to 60 or $80 a head for food and beverage, and then add another $50 per person to it for your staffing and your rentals. And you're very quickly looking at $100 to $150 per head. So are you saving money over the traditional hotel? Probably a little bit, but then you have a whole lot more moving pieces to coordinate as well. But that's going to give you a sense of your baseline. And if that baseline is not going to work for you, and if you do the math and you figure out that what you want doesn't match what you're comfortable contributing financially, then you have to go back to the drawing board and rejig things. Maybe you have to adjust your guest list. And that's the third thing that's going to play into setting a realistic budget. So you have your conversations, you set your baselines, and then you adjust your guest list as necessary. The fastest way to cut down on your expenses is, unfortunately, to reduce that guest list. So those are difficult decisions to make. Absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt. But are you comfortable cutting down your guest list and having a very small wedding, or even a micro wedding, or even an Unmistakably You micro wedding? We're offering a weekend of micro weddings on March 26th and 27th. And it's big on love, small on stress. We do all the planning. You just come in and say, I do. So if you're interested in that, shoot me a message. Look for more information coming out about that shortly. But I digress. The guest list definitely is something that it's an emotional decision. Often people have opinions, especially if they're contributing financially. Your parents might feel that they are entitled to invite some guests if they're contributing towards the budget for the wedding. So guest list is one of the things that will absolutely determine overall budget and what's realistic for you. So it's tough. These are difficult decisions to make and hard conversations to have, but you need to sit down before you book a single thing. You're super excited. I get it. You want to run out and book a venue right away, but I can't tell you how many times I've had people come in and sit down on my couch and say, well, we booked this great venue, and then we realized later that we just really can't afford it. And now they're trying to reverse engineer a budget that works. Start with a budget that works and go from there. Have the difficult conversations. Figure out whether your priorities match the baseline. And if they don't, you have to adjust your priorities. And then you might also have to adjust your guest list. So again, I would love to help you with this further. If you are interested in attending that budget workshop, we do still have some spaces left this coming Wednesday, the 23rd, and Thursday, the 24th. Sorry, not this coming, but the following week. I'm saying as I realize that it's still Sunday. So the 23rd and the 24th, we have those budget workshops. There are still spaces. So send me a DM or send me an email, amy@unmistakablyou.com, if you'd like to join. I promise it's the best $40 or $50 you will spend, and it will give you the insurance of knowing what's realistic. We're going to discuss how to break down that remaining 50% that doesn't get spent on food and beverage. We're going to give you some education about industry pricing, and that, of course, varies based on your geographical region. You're going to leave with a complete, comprehensive budget that's set up specifically for your wedding. And we're going to give you a ton of tips on how to save money and stick to that budget. So that's the 23rd and 24th if you're interested. And as always, I will be here with you again next Sunday at 1 o'clock. We are continuing our expectations series, and next week we're going to talk about what you should know about starting to book your vendors. So we'll talk about attending wedding shows, if that's something you might be doing in the near future. Here in London, our wedding shows got postponed because of our COVID restrictions. So we will be attending the wedding ring show at the at the Lamplighter. And that's on February 27th. And we are also going to be participating in the Bridal Expo at the Convention Center on March 12th and 13th. So those wedding shows are coming up. Next week, we're going to talk to you a little bit about navigating the wedding shows and what you need to know about starting to book your vendors in 2022. We hope to see you next Sunday at 1 o'clock. Have an amazing week. Have a happy Valentine's Day if that's something that you subscribe to. And I will catch you on the flip side. Take care. Bye-bye.